Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Thursday's edition of A Flawed Man of God. I am your host, a very stuffy, very congested Stuart Davis, here to talk to you tonight on my channel, Flawed Man of God. I'm a humble parishioner at a small church just outside of Richmond, Virginia. I'm not a pastor, not a biblical scholar, and I haven't been to seminary. I'm not trying to get you to join my church or donate to any special cause. What I'm here to do is talk about God, talk about Jesus, talk about the Holy Spirit, talk about the Bible, talk about Christianity, talk about a wide variety of different topics, issues, and current events, and give you my perspective on them, one that I think is reflective of your average Christian guy. I've been a Christian all my life, 41 years, non-denominational Protestant. Don't subscribe to any particular doctrine or denomination. I'm just in the Word daily, trying to do it better each and every day. Sometimes I'll get it right. Many times I'll get it wrong. But no matter what, if you're listening to this show, if you're hearing my voice on this stream, you're going to be getting my honest opinions and takes on whatever it is we're talking about. So if there's some of you out there who are not Christians, but you are interested in learning more, you have the desire, but you are hesitant, or you are worried, maybe just plain curious, cautious. Faith is a very important thing, and it is an act of vulnerability to invest it in something. So being reasonable, you may not want to trust it in the hands of a social media influencer. You might not even trust it in the hands of a pastor who you might say as well, this is something they get paid to do. Their whole job depends on whether they convince me or not, right? Fair enough. Maybe instead of hearing it from somebody at the pulpit, you want to hear it from somebody in the pew next to you. And if that's the case, pull up a chair, tune in, settle in, and you'll get what I can offer for you. And that is the guy sitting in the pew next to you. Because I sit in the pew or the chair or wherever it is the congregation sits, but I'll be there. And I'd love to share my experiences with you. And hopefully, what you get from out of this will set you on a path to salvation and a walk as close to Christ as possible. A life-changing event, um, and maybe really what we should call it is a life-saving event. So, um, if you are already a Christian and you just enjoy Christian topics and discussions, welcome as well. It's a great group. You'll find this. We run this very similar to a Wednesday night study group or a Sunday school. It's very casual, very informal, and we have a lot of fun here. And no matter whether you are just interested in learning more about Christianity or you've been one longer than me and you are more mature in your faith than I am, get in the chat. Give me your opinion. Tell me what you're thinking. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What do you have maybe a unique perspective on? And maybe you've got some insights that I don't have. But you'll be joining a great group of folks in that chat who tune in and night out. And as we learned last night, um, or as evidence last night, completely capable of saving the show or making the show into something they create and turning what was supposed to be a very short stream so I could go back to being miserable in my hay fever to a normally length show. They're great. They're awesome. I want you to be part of that. And with that said, we'll get the show started. How is everybody doing? Lucy's in the chat first amongst the assembly. I am once again. Well put. Thad the man. Oi, what a day. What a day. Haven't finished listening to Tucker Putin when I discovered our esteemed leader is giving a press conference, which he apparently butchered, and I haven't finished it either. Well, look, don't raise the bar too high for people with dementia. It is I will outwardly say it. I think the FBI, I think the feds basically told us today he's got it. Um and it's scary to think that that is going on. Everybody, and if some of you guys are old enough to remember Thad, I'm pretty sure you're old enough to remember. Matt, I can't remember how old when the news came out, and I think it was his son who broke it. But when news came out that Ronald Reagan had the very beginning stages of Alzheimer's during the very last year, I think, of his second term, it was scandalous. How dare they? Um, how dare they do that? It was the media tried to make it into this big thing. This man has had dementia since the campaign in 2020 at the latest. At the latest, he is definitely um, mentally compromised. And I'm not saying that out of any type of particular political bend. Um, all you got to do is see it. I mean, all you got to do is listen to the speech. I mean, I remember normal Joe Biden. Those gaffes very different from muttering weird things in the middle of speeches. That's completely different. Completely different thing. So I haven't watched Tucker Putin. I'm not actually all that interested in listening to Tucker Putin um, or the press conference because we'll see. Lucy said, "Hello, everybody. Just bought the Barnes and Noble's version of the King James Bible. Great cover and awesome art. Um, we will be, just so you know, Lucy, we will be going back to Amplified at some point, either right after Psalms or right after Proverbs, probably is what I'm thinking. But when you read the King James Bible, you have to read it like this. in a very hoity-toity voice and affectation. Matt Felty is here. Welcome, sir. Psalms will be discussed, and other new psalms will be discussed. Yes, um, dude, we owe it to the Lord to get back onto the Bible reading. Tucker Putin, lots of history, frying my mind to keep up. You know, there's a lot of history there. So not between Tucker and Putin, but we don't talk a lot about Russian history, but there are definitely a lot of things that we that part cultural. There's cultural history there that we really take for granted and don't learn. It's kind of like me. My son's got a Civil War test going on. Okay, this is Virginia. This is ground zero for much of the Civil War. I live on an artillery line for a Union battery. I grew up on a campsite for 7 days battle. The artillery line here was battled Bethesda Church, and these are only my house that I grew up in is 7 minutes by car from here. It's a matter of miles. Not far from here is my great uncle. Stewart's ride around McClellan was part of this. Miles from here. He was shot in the next county over. Shot and killed in the next county over. Most brilliant horse-mounted cavalry general mind that the U.S. ever produced. Certainly the best out of West Point. And he did it against the best, which was us, or which was against opposing America, the best that the Union had at the time. And what ultimately did him in was a little bit of pride, probably a lot more than a little bit, and just the attrition and not having the same amount access to the same technology as the Union was able to have. Strength in numbers, strength in tech makes it makes you more likely to succeed. But yeah, what I was going to say here is, we study a lot about that, especially in Central Virginia, especially in some of these other counties. If you go outside of Virginia, a lot of times, even if you go south, um, but definitely if you go north, the lack of real knowledge people have, or real teaching about the Civil War, which is a critical point in American history. Um, it's a critical point in American history. Is it's insane how little people know and how little people are taught, and a lot of times taught based on opinion. But there you go. Crap. Yex is. I was about to say Yex is here. You can help you out. Yex in the chat. Thad the man. Can anyone recommend Bible software which allows me to search for text across several revisions? Let me display revisions side by side and see the original Hebrew, etc., with access to a dictionary. We had discussed Bible software before in the past with Yex and Nernaeth and maybe Veritax, I think. But I can't remember. I can't remember if it got that in depth, but I remember Yex, you were, because this is when we were talking about the different translations too, and that's when I was introduced to the awesome Amplified Bible. Yex, you won't believe how happy I was at church last month when my pastor was reading scripture and he put he goes, "This is the Amplified translation." I almost, yes, the Amplified. such a good translation. Um, you don't see that a whole lot in Protestant churches. Everything is every for the most part in I won't say in Protestant in non-denominational churches. It's a lot of New International Version and it's the New Living Translation. Uh, and there's another one, Christian Standard, it's the CSB, the Christian Standard Bible. You don't see a whole lot of. There's some King James readers, but um, you don't see a lot of RSV or Amplified. I started reading when we were doing it in Sunday school. When I started reading from the Amplified, I would read in the Amplified in Sunday school when we were going over a topic, and everybody's like, "What are you reading from?" Because everybody mostly on New International. That's what I've always written. I was like, "Dude, this translation is great. It just gets more into it just helps. It parses some stuff down, breaks it down, explains it to you a little bit better." So, um, but yeah, that if I think he said eSword is what he was saying is out there, and he says it's free. But that's a good starting point at least, and maybe it does everything you need. But welcome, Yex. Glad to have you in here on the stream. Your timing is awesome. Thad said, "Have you listened to or read Jeffrey Rogers Hummel on the start of the Civil War?" I don't think, maybe. There's a lot I've read on the Civil War that I just haven't paid attention to who the author was or whatever. Just because, again, when you live on a Civil War battlefield, when you live around it, when there's nothing but relics of the war in your yard that I could go outside and if I spend enough time, I could still get some. In fact, I'll show you some stuff I've dug up in my backyard. Actually, my dad did it because that's what he geeks out about. Hang on one sec. Look at this man. You give him something, and then all of a sudden he gets weird and says Linux. ESV is another one. Yeah, another popular translation. ESV. Thanks, Matt. All right, we're gonna get to Psalms. I promise, Matt. So I hope I don't get in trouble with YouTube. This is your traditional NATO round 5.56 ball casing and bullet and casing, right? Look at the size of it. It's effectively a very pointy, longer than normal 22 caliber warhead. Okay. Think of it that way. It's got a ton of powder behind it. It's a lot of velocity, right? Don't worry about it, Yex. We're using Linux, he's a weirdo. This kid, Thad. Anyway, so just that's the size, right? So this is a musket ball that we dug out just outside of my house, at the end of my driveway, actually, when they were widening the road at my driveway, and they were clearing things out. My dad took the time he spent like an hour out there. He dug this and two others and a couple of other stuff out. But this is what I'm going to show you. This is a musket round. All right. That over there. That's the difference. Now, again, velocity on this is going to be ridiculous because of that. But the mass of the object hitting you, this is a real warhead. And this is a good chance of what you're gonna get hit with in the Civil War. That's how big the shell is. That's not there's not a casing behind this. This is the bullet. This is the bullet. Now it's gonna be traveling a lot slower, but it's still gonna be going fast. But it's gonna and when it hits you, it's gonna make a massive hole, right? But this is why, like I said, spend an hour out there. Dug up 3 rounds. So, it's all out there. That's why, as like I said, Civil War history out here, it's part of the it's literally part of the landscape. The bodies fell here. Um, the houses burned out around here. And if again, in my case, your family died out here. Um, and also in my family's case, pulled off some pretty amazing feats. From a scale of 1 to 10, how haunted your house is. This house, don't really notice. My parents' house, on the other hand, real creepy. Real creepy. Not so much the house, but the land around it. Um, they sit on almost 20 acres of woods and farmland. So, part of this has to do with, without getting into too much, part of this has to do with what the breaking up of the state between Virginia and West Virginia. Um, Virginia proper, for the most part, we were very farm oriented. And farms back then, plantations and whatnot, equal slaves, and that was a big part of our economy. Virginia and North Carolina specifically, very heavy in tobacco farming. It was a big time cash crop for us. So a slavery was income for us, and so that was a big Now out west of Virginia, the western part of Virginia, out in the mountains, um, even part of what's still Virginia, but the western part of what was then Virginia at the time, uh, they didn't want slavery. They didn't have much to do with it. They didn't farm tobacco. It was mostly coal country. Hell, it's a lot what it still is. Hill country, coal country, and there you have it. But when they what they ultimately did was split, and that's what became West Virginia. West Virginia was a free state, became a free state, did not secede, and Virginia did. And Virginia took, and here's the pivotal thing: Virginia took a lot of the top because Virginia went um, with the South. Um, because of Virginia went, it took a lot of the best and brightest generals. Robert E. Lee, Jeb Stuart, I believe Stonewall Jackson. I mean, that's your big three there. I think Mosby maybe too. Yeah, Stonewall Jackson was from Clarksburg, Virginia, which actually became West Virginia. Um, Powhatan, John Mosby. To me, a lot of people say Bedford Forest, but I didn't really have. I thought Mosby was better. Uh, cavalry general or colonel. Maybe he was a colonel. Anyway, um, he's from Powhatan County, which is just on the other side of Richmond from here. So, um, yeah, I think so. But you imagine that's a big part of why, um, of why that there was probably a lot of consternation behind it. Matt Felty said, "I grew up 40 miles from Andersonville. That's a gnarly place, and you want to talk about place that's supposedly haunted? I know for a fact there's ghost stories out there, but I mean, I can't imagine." Lucy said, "Probably the most controversial opinion I have is that Lincoln was the single most worst president we ever had." I don't think that's. I mean, I don't agree with that. It's one of those things where you're put in a the nation was on the was hurtling towards a conflict. I mean, we had already had we already had a lot of feuding going on with was it Missouri and Kansas? It was highly charged, highly political, and it had something to do with um, it had a lot to do with mistrust between different sides of the argument. I mean, you had to let. It's just it was kind of like Bush in some place. So, oh yeah, but he wasn't the only one who did this. I mean, you talk to me, Roosevelt was a far worse president than Lincoln, but Lincoln did hold the nation together. He ended slavery in America. He he held the Union together, and it was a tough thing, and it was a bloody thing, and maybe it could have been held bet it could have been done better, but again, who at the time would have done a better job? Don't know. Um, but it's it's a heavy topic. It's a heavy topic, and again, we're judging people based off of what we believe today. And there was a lot of things that people believed because it was culturally acceptable back then. And they used, and the interesting thing here, and to tie this into the show, that a lot of people use scripture to justify slavery, which it doesn't, right? Or scripture or God tolerates slavery, but He says if you're going to have slaves, there's a certain way you have to treat them. And the end, and when you look at how it's talking about, it's like, yeah, this person almost voluntarily goes into servitude for you. You have to treat them like family. They are your responsibility. And if you mistreat them, Moses had some words. There's that, but it wasn't because they were because it wasn't it wasn't because of slavery. It was because they were God's chosen tribe, and it was time for them to leave. And it was God's promise to deliver them and take them to that promised land. So, and it was if it's not Pharaoh's reason to get in the way. It does in fact say that outright. But they also have a choice that they can stay as well because man, times are different back then, right? And there's something to be said for three hots and a cot. Um, when you're living under the roof of a person who may be a very benevolent employer, who is interested in taking care of you, as opposed to you going out and maybe not having a good trade, or having your own the way to provide for yourself wholly, or maybe you've got a family underneath of you. Things were different back then, but the slavery that existed in much of the South, and the way that it was justified, and the way that it was executed, um, was not was not what was described in the Bible, and and we're better for it that it's gone, obviously, and you know we came by that decision honestly, after a lot of blood was shed over it, and a lot of damage was done in the wake of it. So um, it's difficult. It's a difficult topic. It's a difficult topic. It's a difficult part of history. It's uncomfortable, but um, look, it's kind of like looking back at your own sins. You've moved past them. Um, we move past it. We recognize our sins. We repent of them, and we move past them, and we try not to repeat them. So we are not defined by them. Maybe we didn't, but I just felt like it just feels like the what do you call it? Everybody's attitude at the time towards each other was, it just felt like, and I wasn't there, but it kind of feels like, just listening to the letters, hearing kind of feeling the tone, it seemed like, you know, maybe if we had some better diplomats, maybe if we had better leaders, maybe we would have come out with a good way of doing it. But people were hotheads back then too. People were hotheads back then too. But again, that's in the past. They've had to account for the things that they did. Um, we are left with, again, you said, in a better place after that. So, think Biden is worse? Yeah, he is. He is not the worst, I don't think. So still, um, I still don't like uh Woodrow Wilson. I don't like Roosevelt, FDR Roosevelt. Um, Lyndon Johnson. Those are all presidents in the last 120 years that I think are worse. That I would put much lower on the list. All right. Well, let's get out of that. Let's get out of the errors and the sins of man, and focus on the beauty, then joy that is Psalms. Carter also. Jeez, how did I miss that? What are we on tonight? 77 and 78. Is it 77 and 78 tonight? What was the last one? 75, 76. This is 77 and 78 tonight. All right. Now for what is truly based. I like that. Wait, well, hold on. This presidential election will be my first where I can vote, and I'm writing in Jesus. You Christian nationalist. That's what I'll tell everybody. Look, it's the only time I wave the flag at people. It's the only time I consciously wave the flag at people. Vote. You don't have to vote for the candidates running. You write in, go out and exercise your right to vote. Right in Jesus. Wouldn't be a better candidate. Yex. Bush, Nixon. I didn't think Nixon was all that bad. Nixon's China policy was probably a huge mistake, but I don't know. Reagan, big fan of Reagan. Carter and Wilson. Oh, did he really? Oh, big. That's a big. That's a bad one. No fault divorce. That's a. That seems uncharacteristic for him. Really does. But at the same time, and that's a big. It's not that this won't wash away that, but National Day of Prayer. But I didn't know that. Interesting tidbit on history there, Lucy. This is simp. Hey, so was King David and Solomon, King Solomon, at the end with their women's. So it happens to the best of us. Happens to the best of us. All right. Like I said, 40 minutes in, I'm still congested. I'm still got hay fever. Let's give the Lord his due and read his word and be joyful. Also, congratulations, GX. Happy to hear about your you participating in the election. Yeah, exactly, Lucy. All right, the consoling memory of God's redemptive works. To the chief musician, to Jeduthun, a psalm of Asaph. Asaph does the best. I cried out to God with my voice, to God with my voice, and he gave ear to me. In the day of my trouble, I sought the Lord. My hand was stretched out in the night without ceasing. My soul refused to be comforted. I remembered God and was troubled. I complained, and my spirit was overwhelmed. Selah. You hold my eyelids open. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I have considered the days of old, the years of ancient times. I call to remembrance my song in the night. I meditate within my heart, and my spirit makes diligent search. Thanks. Thanks, Steve. Hate it when I forget that. Ugh. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. It's been a while. This is what happens when I get out of my routine. ADHD takes over. I call to remembrance my song in the night. I meditate within my heart, and my spirit makes diligent search. Will the Lord cast off forever? And will he be favorable no more? Has his mercy ceased forever? Has his promises failed forevermore? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he, in his anger, shut up his tender mercies? Selah. And I said, this is my anguish, but I will remember the years of the right hand of the Most High. I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember your wonders of old. I will also meditate on all your work and talk of your deeds. Your way, O God, is in the sanctuary. Who is so great a God as our God? You are the God who does wonders. You have declared your strength among the peoples. You have with your arm redeemed your people, the sons of Jacob and Joseph, Selah. The waters saw you, O God. The waters saw you, they were afraid. The depths also trembled. The clouds poured out water. The skies sent out a sound. Your arrows also flashed about. The voice of your thunder was in the whirlwind. The lightnings lit up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was in the sea, your path in the great waters, and your footsteps were not known. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Powerful. Powerful. That last part, just discussing how powerful God was. I love it when they get really descriptive. David's great about this. David was great about the imagery. Asaph's really good. Yex says, "Woo." Mine says, "I remembered God and was glad." Huh. Which translation are you in, Yex? I remembered God and was glad. I complained and my spirit became discouraged. Lucy says, "This is great for when one is feeling anxious or depressed, possibly when feeling troubled of the things going on in our lives for the troubles that come before us." Yeah, I think that's and I think that's why it's aptly the consoling memory of God's redemptive works. You need consolation, here's God. Okay, the Septuagint. I think it's definitely a big difference between troubled and glad. But I think what we're seeing here kind of is the same thing. It's a weird, but it is a weird, it's a good catch, Yex. Um, that is an odd thing. Let's look at let's look at the let's move away from the Presbyterians and go with the NIV, my non-denominational. I remember God was troubled. Okay, in the NIV. Let's see what Amplified says. I remembered God and was troubled. Very similar writing all through. Wait. Oh, wait. I didn't hit the search button. My bad. Hold on. Let me do this again. Let's go to the NIV. Hmm. Here's interesting. New International. I remembered you, God, and I groaned. I meditated, and my spirit grew faint. Amplified. What does Amplified say? I remember God and I am disquieted, and I groan, I sigh in prayer, and my spirit grows faint. I'd be interested to see. No, I'm not going into any other ones. Let's do the English Standard Vibe version. When I remember God, I moan. When I meditate, my spirit faints. Yeah, that I was thinking just about that because I was like, Yex has brought up this big reason why. And I was like, man, if only I had some software. Um, let's go back to King James or New King James. All right, let's go back. It's okay, Asorio. We just started actually the reading. We were talking about history. All right. So, Yex said, I love those last 5 verses or so. Also, when it says, the waters saw you and were afraid, it reminds me of some hymns we use in the Orthodox Church for when Christ was baptized. Ooh, I like that. I like that for when Christ was baptized. Like the waters, like the waters were fearful to embrace God in itself. Themselves. I don't care. Is it water plural or is it water singular? Right. um Y'all looking at old maps with USSR, ESV. Uh, Yak says, here's a quote from a hymn of theophany. The waters saw you, O God, and were afraid, for the cherubim cannot lift their eyes upon your glory, nor can the seraphim gaze upon you. But standing by you in fear, the first carry you, and the second glorify you. We proclaim with them, O merciful Lord, O God, who has appeared to the world, have mercy on us. God have mercy. Amen. Reminds me more of Leviathan. All right, so cried out to God with my voice. So let's talk about that first part since there's a little bit. I don't think the difference in translation, at least in this case, really kind of changes the tone. Does a little bit, but I think the overall what we're overall grasping at here. I cried out to God with my voice, to God with my voice, and He gave ear to me. In the day of my trouble, I sought the Lord. Okay, so they're talking about somebody who is experiencing trouble. They're in they're in a place in their life where things aren't going good, and they need help, and they reaching out to God for help. Appropriate thing to do. My hand was stretched out in the night without ceasing. My soul refused to be comforted. I remembered God and was troubled. And I think what it's here, what we see in the Septuagint kind of makes me think. I remembered. Or hang on, let me quote it exactly. What Yek said. In my remembered God and was glad. If I remember God made me glad. This sounds more like I remembered God while I was troubled. I complained and my spirit was overwhelmed. There have been times where I've had um nighttime prayer is always the most um moving to me. Nighttime before I go to bed, it's always a conversation with the Lord. It would be the last person I talk to. Um maybe if I ever die, if I do die in my sleep, maybe it'll be just a continuation of the conversation. But there have been times where that is where a lot of my troubles come up, and I'm reaching out and I'm like, most of the time it's me giving thanks. I have so much to be blessed for. I don't really want to ask for things other than, hey, look out for the folks who need it, right? Um, be with them. I'm Look out for me as well. But you've blessed me so much already. I don't feel like I can ask for anything more other than, you know, correction when I need it and, you know, look out, protect me from evil, that kind of stuff. There are times where I'm worried, times where I'm fearful of things, times where Satan is kind of out to get me, I think, you know, with doubts and bad and dark thoughts and stuff like that. I call out to God with that troubled spirit, and He has calmed me. But it feels a lot like what is described in this psalm. You kept on writing, Yex, and I didn't read. I didn't keep reading. Um, no, I wrote it back. Oh no, no, no. I read the whole thing. That's right. Okay, never mind. Um, Lucy said, "Where are you getting that? It sounds fascinating." Yex said it's a quote from the Virgil service for Theophany in the Orthodox Church. Um, Matt Felty said the ocean waters is domain of Satan. He heard an interesting take of the meaning of calming tempest and walking on water. Re, that's symbolism. Is it? Is ocean the domain of Satan? I don't know if I've heard that. Could mean to me the water in general. It's water is life. It is a it can. There is more water on the planet than land. There's more water in our bodies than anything else. But I don't know. Yex says, "Yeah, that's the smallest theme in the Bible. If I remember, if as far as I know, that's a new one for me. Cool. Didn't think about that." You hold my eyelids open. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I have considered the days of old, the years of ancient times. I call to remembrance my song in the night. I meditate with my heart, and my spirit makes diligent search. I can't get to sleep. I'm so worked up with it, and you've got me focused on it, and now I ain't going to sleep, and I'm thinking about everything. Important things, right? Days of old, years of ancient times, stuff where God was establishing covenants and fulfilling covenants, making promises, performing wonders. We were screwing up as we do, as one does. Um, Call remembers my song in the night, meditate with my heart, and will the Lord cast? And here's the thing. Here's that worry. Here's that guilt following up here. Will the Lord cast off forever? When will he be favorable no more? Has his mercy ceased forever? Has God had his fill of me? Has God had his fill of my people? Is he ready to throw us out? Because it really sounded like he was up on Mount Sinai. Yes, absolutely. Alluded to as the serpent in Genesis, definitely in Job. Um, Satan tempts Jesus in the wilderness. Yeah, he's there. And in Revelation, all over Revelation. And then, or Jesus at one point, get behind me, Satan. We'll get to those parts. Um, but Job's plight was instigated by Satan. Well, the Lord cast these things this is guilt. As the Lord had enough of me, I am a miserable wretch. I am what is the I think I got the meme. Gosh, I think I got the meme from yeah, 'cause I can't remember that guy from the Orthodox that I got in that I argue with all the time, or I used to argue with all the time. Um Band brother or band whatever, band dad or whatever his name is now because he changes it all the time because he's constantly he has moments of he has moments of good and then no moments where he's just you put way more on Twitter than you probably should, dude. Um but he had a great meme I stole from him. But it was basically I betray God every day. I am Judas, or I betray God all the time. I'm Judas every day. That's how it feels sometimes. You just can't get past things. And that's real. That's real when you're talking about this. It's like God, I'm talking to you, but and I feel like I know I have salvation, but I feel like I'm not worth it. I feel like there are things about me that aren't that you're going to look at me and find me wanting. Silver goes a long way these days, Yex. Lucy says, I always remember when Jesus walked on water towards Simon. That part of the gospel helped me through plenty of bad times. Good point. Manuel says, yes, Satan is real, just like heaven. There is a hell, no denying that. Thad says, but those are tying things that might not be related. In Job, Satan is in heaven and is described more as an inspector general than an enemy. Not so much as an inspector general. He is who he always has been, kind of, or he's mostly described a trickster, a tempter, a whatever. I mean, he's a corrupting force. He tempts Christ. He makes accusations. He thinks he's slick. That's why one of the reasons I love Paradise Lost so much is that Milton does such a good job encapsulating the personality you get out of the Bible of Satan and how he would be kind of dramatized, and it it really feels like the same one in Job. He goes, ah. He's always doubting. He's always trying to downplay things, and the power of God and how great it is and all this other stuff. That doesn't come across to me like an inspector general. That comes across to me as a dissonant. And he still, and look, um he may have rebelled against God. He may have been cast out, but he still answers to God, just like we all do. What a conversation. What are you talking about, Yex? Oh. Lucy said, there's a reason I've chosen this name for my YouTube account. I met the enemy. Not a fun experience. I have known this from a lot of I have met a handful of people who have who went into that black art, black arts, black magic stuff, and had experiences that have scared them into Christianity, scared them to Jesus. Smart. Smart. Satan is not in living hell, by the way. He is prowling about like a roaring lion. And yeah, he shows up before God and his council. I heard this. I don't think he's prowling around like a roaring lion. I think he's strutting around, pretending to be one of us. When we talk about the wolves, I think the wolf would be um the wolf would be a better one. As much as I love wolves, but we talk about, the wolf in sheep's clothing, the wolf going after the sheep. When you see these folks peddling uh, in trying to give a false gospel, that I think is definitely Satan at work. Definitely Satan. But yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree with you there on Yex. He's not in hell. He's trying to gather as much to take as many to take down with him as possible. He's the guy who puts God's creation to the test. It doesn't need, but that's the thing. God doesn't need it put to the test. He made it. He made it the way he wanted to be made it to be made. And I think, and maybe Lucifer sees himself in that role because there's a lot of pride in Satan. Sorry, not I say Lucifer. Maybe Satan sees himself in that role, sees that of himself. I'm just testing it out. I'm just showing people why it might not be the best. He is. I don't think in any way, shape, or form he is he is an official um, tester of God's creations. And the prosecutor, yeah, we've been pardoned. Yeah. Satan is a warp demon, as in 40K, a slow corruption that tries to make you practice and sin. Slow and almost imperceptible, but once it takes hold and doesn't let you go until you repent. I've read this. This is one of my favorite Warhammer books. It's one of my favorite books in the Horus Heresy. It's a pair of them. Prospero Burn or A Thousand Suns and Prospero Burns. And I'm reading through the whole series right now. So I'm at Prospero Burns. And Magnus is such a likable Primarch, but he's so childlike in some ways and so powerful in other ways and so wise in other ways. But his pride puts him into position where the Shaitan is able to trick him into basically being the road to hell is paved in good intentions. That's the story of Magnus. And basically tricks him into destroying something that ends up being a pivotal problem in the hair in the Civil War in the Imperium. It's amazing. Um, Thad the man, but Job, he is in heaven, or he when Job, but in Job, he is in heaven. I don't think he is ever described as being in open rebellion, unlike Baal. Yeah, I saw you, Baal. Um, and he is he has to present himself before the Lord. I don't know. Let's go back. Since we have access to the Bible here, I don't know if he's actually in. Yeah. Uh, let's go back. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" The way Satan interacts with God is not the way of somebody who is on good terms with him. There's a lot of there's a lot of I don't think he's in heaven. Yex said, "My girlfriend has a lot of experience in paganism. Coincidentally, so many there are a lot of more. It seems like there's a whole lot more girls who do this because I'm gonna be a witch. My girlfriend has a lot of experience with paganism. Coincidentally, every group she joined ended up pointing her either to Yahweh, to either Yahweh or an ultimate father god. Exactly. They see that is Thad having issues with that. Lucy, a long while back, I was going down an extremely dark path, and there was a moment when I had a dream and I met the devil. It was the most beautiful, terrifying thing I've ever seen. Might be an interesting thing to put down to put words to paper on. Yeah, except that I think you should keep the entirety of the Bible in mind as well as the context of early Christianity. Satan is most certainly the enemy of mankind. He deceived us, and his angels brought us into idol worship. But since all things work ultimately for God, all of Satan's rebellion is to our favor. And here's how it's alluded to here. If you want more, mm, the Nephilim, the sons of God saw the daughters of men; they were beautiful, and they took wives from themselves, all of whom they chose. Part of the flood, or the reason for the flood, is because of that going on. God's not tolerating that among the angels that are in his court. Lucy says, imagine a person or entity who's made of cold white light. It was very persuasive and seductive, both physically and emotionally. Steve says he's the prosecutor when we have Judgment Day. Um, he has, and I'll throw this in here because he has access only because God lets him till Judgment Day. He has access to God, but not to heaven. Your name says, what about heaven now? Nephilim mentioned. Woo! Man, there's so much I want to learn about the Nephilim. Just because that's part when we talk about like what Thad was talking about with the divine council, some of that other stuff that comes into play, um, the war in heaven, that kind of the rebellion, all that kind of stuff. It's all super interesting to me. Let's see. That's right. Satan and his demons accuse us. Christ and his Father and Holy Spirit forgive and cleanse us. They will accuse us until we die, and Christ will forgive everyone who seeks to be forgiven. Yes, so good for someone who is just old enough to vote nowadays. Lucy says he was so persuasive, I was nearly lost completely. I have only Jesus to thank for not giving in completely. Well, Lucy, if it makes you feel any better, so does every single person who accepts Jesus. I don't know how the Calvinists interpret that, but you can interpret that to me. Look, we're not even through the review of the first one. We're already over an hour. That's great. Great discussions. But we have to go back. We have to go back. Here we go. And I said, "This is my anguish. But I will remember the years of the light right hand of the Most High. I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember your wonders of old. I will meditate on all your work and talk of your deeds. I am I am not. I am in doubt of myself, but I remember how great and merciful and wondrous and loving you are, and all the things that you've done for us. All the things that you've done for us. Your way, O God, is in the sanctuary. Who is so great a God as our God? You are the God who does wonders. You have declared your strength among the peoples. You have with your armed redeem. I'm sorry. You have with your arm redeemed your people, the sons of Jacob and Joseph. And here we get to that part at the end that it sounds powerful. It's just very well written. The waters saw you, O God. The waters saw you. They were afraid. The depths also trembled. The clouds poured out water. The skies sent out a sound. Just power and respect. Fearful respect, not like, I salute you respect. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Great psalm. I love psalms. I love the psalms. They're so good. God's kindness to rebellious Israel. Hey, Yex says, hour is nothing to me. I can yap for days. That's why I ended up settling on this, even though when I first decided I wanted to try out a YouTube channel, I wanted to do it for the grift, for the monetary grift. But then I realized that the only thing that I can really talk for days and days and days and days on that isn't like everybody's got a Warhammer channel. Everybody's got a sports channel. Just talking about God. Yeah, there's a fair amount of podcasts out there, but not exactly doing what I'm doing. But if I do this, it's not going to be for the money. It's not going to be for the money. Which is part of the reason why I don't chase the I've got to get so no, I can't. You can't super chat me yet because and I don't necessarily want super chats. But in order to qualify for them, I need more. I've got the subscriber count just over the right subscriber count, but the watch time isn't enough. Not enough watch time yet. So there has to be an average of so and so many hours over a 6-month period or something like that. And you can tell how much I care about it because I don't know any of those figures. But I realize that's what I could talk about. That's great. That's that the grift became from money to souls. Hey, brother, from what I can tell, your grift for souls is working, brother. You helped me a lot, man. Look again. That makes that's why I like days like today when I'm like, oh gosh, I really don't feel good. Maybe I won't do it. Just roll into the weekend or whatever. I was like, well, we talked about some other stuff. I didn't stream on Monday. Need to give God his due on the show and be there for the people. Plus, I'm gonna enjoy doing it, like I'm doing it now. Like I went from, I don't know if I want to do this to I'm an hour and 10 minutes, and we're just getting started on the second psalm. Just as a conduit for God is helping all of us here, just goodness. Yeah. The contemplation of Asaph, God's kindness to a rebellious in Israel. We all need to perk our ears up here. Give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, telling to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wonderful works that he has done. For he has established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, the children who would be born, that they may arise and declare them to their children, that they may set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments, and may not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that did not set its heart aright, and whose spirit was not faithful to God. The children of Ephraim, being armed and carrying bows, turned back the day of battle. They did not keep the covenant of God. They refused to walk in his law and forgot his works and his wonders that he had shown them. Marvelous things he did in the sight of their fathers in the land of Egypt, in the fields of Zoan. He divided the sea and caused them to pass through, and he made the water stand up like a heap. In the daytime also he led them with the cloud, and all the night with a light of fire. He split the rocks in the wilderness and gave them drink in abundance like the depths. He also brought streams out of the rock and caused waters to run down like rivers. But they sinned even more against him by rebelling against the Most High in the wilderness, and they tested God in their heart by asking for the food of their fancy. Yes, they spoke against God. They said, "Can God prepare a table in the wilderness? Behold, he struck the rock so that the waters gushed out and the streams overflowed. Can he give bread also? Can he provide meat for his people?" Therefore the Lord heard this and was furious. So a fire was kindled against Jacob, and the anger also came up against Israel, because they did not believe in God and did not trust in his salvation. Yet he had commanded the clouds above and opened the doors of heaven, had rained down manna on them to eat, and given them the bread of heaven. Men ate angels' food. He sent them food to the full. He caused an east wind to blow in the heavens, and by his power he brought in the south wind. He also rained meat on them like the dust, feathered fowl like the sand of the seas, and he let them fall in the midst of their camp all around their dwellings. So they ate and were well fed, well filled, for he gave them their own desire. They were not they were not deprived of their craving. But while their food was still in their mouths, the wrath of God came against them, and slew the stoutest of them, and struck down the choice men of Israel. In spite of this, they still sinned, and did not believe in his wondrous works. Therefore, their days he consumed in futility, and their years in fear. When he slew them, then they sought him, and they returned and sought earnestly for God. Then they remembered that God was their rock. Excuse me, guys. And they remembered that God was their rock, and the Most High God their Redeemer. Nevertheless, they flattered him with their mouth, and they lied to him with their tongue. For their heart was not steadfast with him, nor were they faithful in his covenant. But he, being full of compassion, forgave their iniquity, and did not destroy them. Yes, many a time he turned his anger away, and did not stir up all his wrath. For he remembered that they were but flesh, a breath that passes away and does not come again. How often they provoked him in the wilderness and grieved him in the desert. Yes, again and again they tempted God and limited the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember his power, The day when he redeemed them from the enemy, when he worked his signs in Egypt and his wonders in the field of Zoan, turned their rivers into blood and their streams that they could not drink. He sent swarms of flies among them, which devoured them, and frogs, which destroyed them. He also gave their crops to the caterpillar and their labor to the locust. He destroyed their vines with hail and their sycamore trees with frost. He also gave up their cattle to the hail and their flocks to fiery lightning. He cast on them the fiercenesses of his anger, wrath, indignation, and trouble by sending angels of destruction among them. He made a path for his anger. He did not spare their soul from death, but gave their life over to the plague and destroyed all the firstborn in Egypt, the first of their strength in the tents of Ham. But he made his own people go forth like sheep and guided them in the wilderness like a flock. And he led them on safely so that they did not fear. But the sea overwhelmed their enemies, and he brought them to his holy border, this mountain which his right hand had acquired. He also drove out the drove out the nations before them, allotted them an inheritance by survey, and made the tribes of Israel dwell in their tents. Yet they tested and provoked the Most High God and did not keep his testimonies, but turned back and acted unfaithfully like their fathers. They were turned aside like a deceitful bow. For they provoked him to anger with their high places and moved him to jealousy with their carved images. When God heard this, he was furious and greatly abhorred Israel, so that he forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent he had placed among men, and delivered his strength into captivity and his glory into the enemy's hand. He also gave his people over to the sword and was furious with his inheritance. The fire consumed their young men, and their maidens were not given in marriage. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. Then the Lord awoke from sleep. I'm sorry. Then the Lord awoke as from sleep, like a mighty man who shouts because of wine. And he beat back his enemies. He put them to a perpetual reproach. Moreover, he rejected the tent of Joseph and did not choose the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, which he loved. And he built his sanctuary like the heights, like the earth which he has established forever. He also chose David his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds. From following the ewes that had young, he brought him to shepherd Jacob his people, and Israel his inheritance. So he shepherded them according to the integrity of his heart, and guided them by the skillfulness of his hands. Whew! That's a long one. That's a long one. But it's long because it's going over some stuff. Yes. This is straight up obviously Christ speaking. Um I mean, it sounds like that. Kind of sounds like Moses in Deuteronomy, but before all this other stuff happened. I mean, it's the constant refrain. This is a reminder. The beginning of this, God's kindness to rebellious Israel. We give so much grief to the Israelites for their stupid and what do we call it? Stubborn and stiff-necked behavior, rebellious behavior, but we act like they do. Steve says following him isn't easy. Following him requires accepting struggles that are beyond your control. Good move. Good thought there. Manuel Osorio. Wow, sounds a lot like people today. How come God doesn't show up? The Bible is inconsistent. The Bible is inconsistent. And when God shows miracles to us, nah, that ain't God. Yeah, I love the Old Testament. We need more of these messages. Let him cook. Yeah, that's what he's going through. Steve Hawley says the last post I got today from a prayer and help me calm down and refocus myself on keeping my eyes on the Lord. Yeah, that's good. Asaph Psalms are like a journal from a historical sage, and this one definitely. All right, so let's get started on this. Give ear to my people, to the law, incline your ears to the words of my mouth. Listen to me. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from our children, telling to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength, and his wonderful works that he has done. I am going to repeat to you the. You're not, Yex. You're not. That's why I said it's we we jive and talk about, and I'm famous for this. Like I said, I can't stand um how the Israelites squandered such great blessings because they got to experience him very much in a very overt, and it's the faith was having faith that he was there and was ready to protect you and looking out for you was so obvious, it feels like, and yet they didn't care. They still want to do their own thing. It's such a to me, it's like, what a time to be alive. It wasn't easy by any means, but imagine what you did get to experience. We have so much trying to convince you that it's not real, that it never happened, that it was allegorical. That I had to just go out on their back porch, see it happening. Their fathers have told us. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to talk about I'm going to sing the song of my people. That's what Asaph is saying. I'm going to sing to you my song of my people, the stuff we learn from our fathers and the stuff that we need to pass on to our children and our children's children that they don't forget, because so much of what I'm getting around to talking about is when they forgot. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers. They should make known to their children, the generation to come that might know them, the children who would be born, that they may arise and declare them to their children. Yes, this is talking about right here. It's part of the Pentateuch. It's part of the establishment that, you know, again, Deuteronomy to me is so much of Moses warning his people. God has done great things. We know he's done great things. We've all seen the great things he's done. Don't forget it. Don't let our people forget it. And not only that, establishing our society, we're going to, as part of what we do, we need to get back together every so many years and talk about it and remind ourselves what it was. Keep his commandments. That says all we squander. It's all we squan. It's all we all squander a lot. Basic tenet of Christianity: we are schmucks, but it's okay. I'm assuming that's supposed to be schmucks. Emmanuel says the only thing I don't get is why do people try to say Jews weren't in Egypt? That's always been my question. But who built the pyramids? It's always the gotchas, and it's always the ancient aliens, whatever. They forget. Here's the thing that we forget, and that they don't talk about. The Egyptians, it was a very racist culture there. The Egyptians, Joseph rising to the point the place that he was incredibly odd. It's incredibly odd. And as soon as that Pharaoh died and Joseph died, they were slaves. Egyptians looked down on Jews the same way Jews look down on um, the Samaritans and the Gentiles, unclean and beneath them. So they didn't care about saying, mentioning their culture because there was no thought police out there going, oh, you need to be more inclusive in your language. Yeah, you think the Egyptians write down how bad? There's a lot of pride on that. Yeah, while they're worshiping their gods. Golly. The children of Ephraim, being armed and carrying bows, turned back the day of battle. They did not keep the covenant of God. They refused to walk in his law and forgot his works and his wonders that he had shown them. Marvelous thing and he did in the sight of their fathers in the land of Egypt, in the field of Zoan, divided the sea, caused them to pass through. He made the waters stand up like a heap. In the daytime, he led them with the cloud, night with the fire, split rocks in the wilderness. This is all the stuff. This is what we remember from the Exodus, right? Got him out of Egypt, parted the Red Sea and then to escape from the Egyptians, and then brought the sea down on the Egyptian army. What is Zoan? I can't remember. Hold on. Part of the Exodus. Oh, okay. It's part of the exit. The field of Zoan, it's the location where Moses performed miracles before Pharaoh to persuade him, but didn't work. City in Egypt. Yeah. Um Talking about the miracles performed. He's talking about getting them out of Egypt. He's talking about parting the Red Sea and then destroying it and then putting it back on top of the Egyptian army, which was massive at the time. He didn't destroy all the army, just the army that had followed him in. He guided them through the wilderness as a pillar of fire at night and a cloud of smoke by day. He gave them things. He gave them drink, all the things. They didn't have to be survivalists. They just had to walk around. It was basically a big hiking trip. God provided everything. But they sinned even more against him by rebelling against the Most High in the wilderness. Do you remember Mount Sinai? We're lucky God didn't just end it all right then. I can't imagine the ridiculousness. I can't imagine the look on Moses' face when God goes, "You need to go down there and get your boys because we're about to." And he looks at Moses. He goes, "Look, I can end it all right now, and I can start over, and you can be the new Abraham, Moses, and I'll let your descendants. But all these folks, they're done. I'm done with them." And then Moses, "No, no, 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 don't do that. Don't do that." And convinces him not to. Convinces him not to. Now like I said, imagine the look on Moses' face. That was one of my best live streams of reading the Bible. And a great thing about it was my son was watching the whole thing. They did that. They sinned in their heart and then they tested God because they asked, "Oh, what about we're hungry. We need to eat. We need something to eat. We're gonna starve in the wilderness. It was just better when we were slaves. We had something to eat." And God says, "Wait." He rained down manna on them to eat and gave them the bread of heaven. Men ate angels' food. He sent them food to the full. And not only that, it was fresh. every day except for Sunday because they were supposed to have enough, gather enough on Saturday, or I'm sorry, except for the Sabbath, whether they were whatever day they were doing this, whatever it is, seventh day, because on the sixth day they were supposed to gather enough and prepare enough for the seventh day where they could rest. And they still tried to take more because they didn't. This is all about how they didn't have faith. And this is very well parallel, like Yex said, like Steve said, very well parallels. God is providing for us. Do you trust him or do you not trust him? Mm. The late, great Wayne Kirby did a good job talking about this as it applied to his own life. And Wayne Kirby, those of you who haven't heard me talk about it before, he was the elder at our church who died, gosh, 2 years ago, I think now, almost 2 years ago. He was, in many part ways, we talk about the heart and soul of our church. A lot of the problems that I think we had that I was talking about yesterday wouldn't have happened if he was still around. He wouldn't have he wouldn't have been having it. Failure is not an option wasn't what a famous thing that he was talking about. And he would talk about tithing. He would talk about how, you know, when he was he and his wife, a young family, young husband, young wife, young kids, um, things were really tight. But he said, "We're going to put this money aside, and God will provide." So he put his money aside, and God saw that he could be trusted with little, so he gave him much. And Wayne became a very successful person um, in his job and in his spiritual life, um, and leading a church that was very near and dear to my heart. Um, and it was a great example. He's a great example to everybody. But this is what we see just in that one, thing that they did. I want more. Just in case God stops, I want to make sure I've got some more. And they think they can fool God and they can get one up on him, and God would just rot it and mold it and make it disgusting. I'm providing for you. Y'all are wards of in my domain. I told you, you whined and complained, and now I'm feeding you. You don't have to worry about it anymore. God's got it, baby. You don't have to worry about drinking. God's going to get you fresh water. You're eating manna from heaven. Yet they spoke against God. They said, "Can God prepare a table in the wilderness? Can he give bread also? Can he provide meat for his people?" He gave them doves, and he said, "You will get." Hold on. I love this. Love this part. Hang on. Let's see. Sorry for the dead air, folks. Let's see. Where is the. It's not in that chapter, deck on it. Deck on it. Hang on. Anyway, basically, I'm going to give you so much meat that you're going to be sick of it. You are going to be just absolutely sick of it. I'm sick of your complaining. You stiff necked, stubborn people. Faithless. Ugh! God. Anger boiling up. Stop not trusting me. Just obey. Just have faith. Just believe. You know I'm there. You know I've shown you that I can do. I've shown you that I'm doing this. One of the preeminent empires had you enslaved in the middle of at their home empire, and I went in there and sent an old stuttering man and his brother, his half brother, and delivered you guys out of it. And when you were trapped at the shores of the sea, I split it in two, and you walked over on dry land. See you later, Yex. Thank you for your time. Yeah, I know that that's the part where I was looking. There was a part where he basically said they were complaining before then. Is it Numbers? Lord sends quail. Maybe this is it. This is one of my favorite parts of the Bible, and this in Numbers 11, Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families, everyone at the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord was greatly aroused. Moses also was displeased. So Moses said to the Lord, "Why have you afflicted your servant, and why have I not found favor in your sight that you have laid the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive all of these people? Did I beget them? That you should say to me, carry them into your bosom as a guardian carries a nursing child to the land which you swore to their fathers? Where am I to get meat to get to all of these people? For they weep all over me, saying, give us meat that we may eat. I'm not able to bear all these people alone because the burden is too heavy for me. If you treat me like this, please kill me here and now. If I have found favor in your sight and do not let me see my wretchedness. It's basically, why have you burdened me, infected me with this? What did I do? If you love me, God, just kill me. That's still not the right place. That's not, or I don't see the part where he's basically like, I'm going to give you so much that you're going to be sick of it. The people complain. Anyway, where's I at? He caused an east wind to blow in the heavens, and by his power he brought the south wind. Oh, there's a ton of based rants in the Bible. He caused an east wind to blow in the heavens, and by his power he brought the south wind. He also rained meat on them like dust and feathered fowl like the sound of seas. Yeah, we talked about that. In spite, and then but in this Numbers 11, the wrath of God came against them, and he slew the stoutest of them and struck down the choice men of Israel. So if we go back to Numbers, because this is easily forgotten, because I had totally forgotten about this. I was reading that going, where is it talking about that? But while the meat was still in between their teeth before it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was aroused against the people, and the Lord struck the people with a very great plague. We called the name of that place Kibroth Hatava, because there they buried the people who had yielded to craving. In spite of this, they still sinned and did not believe in his wondrous works. Therefore, their days he consumed in futility and their years in fear. They're going through the wilderness now. Because when they come up to the point where it's like, here's your land, and they go, send scouts out. The scouts go, the Nephilim, the giants, they're huge. We can't fight them, blah, 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 blah. But Caleb and Joshua go, God's got us. Let's go down there right now. I'm ready. I'm ready. You ready? Let's go. When he slew them, then they sought him, and they returned to sought and sought earnestly for God. When he punished them, they flattered him with their mouth, and they lied to him with their tongue, or their heart was not steadfast to him. Now were they faithful in their covenant. This goes through Judges and throughout Israel, through the history of Israel and Judah. We forget, we get punished, we come back. How often they provoked him in the wilderness and grieved him in the desert. Yes, again and again they tempted God and limited the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember his power, the day when he redeemed them from the enemy, when he worked his signs in Egypt and his wonders in the field of Zoan, turned their rivers into blood and their streams to goodness. Now he's talking about, he goes back and now he's referring to the plagues in Egypt. But he made his own people go forth like sheep and guide them in the wilderness like a flock. And he led them on safely. So they did not fear, but they feared anyway, and they complained anyway. But the sea overwhelmed their enemies, and he brought them to his holy border. this mountain which his right hand had acquired. He also drove out the nations before them, allotted them an inheritance by the survey. The establishment of the establishment of Israel and the different tribes and their portions dwell in their tents. They tested and provoked the Most High God and did not keep his testimonies, but turned back and acted unfaithfully as like their fathers. And so he goes, I've had enough. I've had enough. Back to Judges. And the people died. Then the Lord awoke as from sleep, like a mighty man who shouts because of wine. I'm tell you something. And he beats back his enemies. He put them on to a perpetual reproach. He rejected the tent of Joseph and did not choose the tribe of Ephraim, chose the tribe of Judah. I still want to know why Judah and not Joseph, and not one of the tribes of Joseph. Maybe because there was two? I don't know. And he built his sanctuary like the height, like the earth which he has established forever. He chose David his servant. He's talking about Jerusalem and King David. So he shepherded them according to the integrity of his heart and guided them by the skillfulness of his hands. A lot like God does. All right, that's enough. Two great Psalms. Psalms are so awesome. Emmanuel, Matt Felty, Yex, Steve Hawley, Thad the Man, Emmanuel Osorio. Did I say Matt Felty? If I didn't, Matt Felty. Nernath, Lucy, who was here at the beginning of the show. Lots of comments tonight. Very good. Very good. I think that's it. I think Dresden's in here somewhere too, because he usually is. Great stream tonight. Great discussions with everybody. We're not streaming tomorrow. It's Friday. Take the rest of the weekend off. It's Super Bowl Sunday. All right. Listen out. Been very, very pleased with what I've heard out of Brock Purdy, just because he's a man who's not afraid to talk about God. And he's in a city that doesn't particularly care for God. But here's the thing about Super Bowl Sunday. Be safe out there. There's a lot of people who can't handle the liquor, can't handle their spirits. And I don't want any of you guys making poor choices because you had too much to drink, or be on the receiving end of the mistakes of somebody else who has had too much to drink. Be safe, be careful, enjoy yourselves. Have a very productive and restful weekend. And go Steelers. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it, Lucy. Maybe one day. But thank you guys in the chat. Thank you for everybody who all the words you said, the words of encouragement, the words of knowledge, helping each other out, helping me out. It's awesome. Like I said, I'll say it every stream I can. You guys are great and of value to this show, and I care about you guys a lot. So I'll talk to you guys on Monday. To everybody in the chat, to everybody who didn't participate in the chat because you couldn't or you wouldn't, you should. You should. I'd like you to, but really, I'm honestly just happy that you're finding something that you enjoy listening to night in and night out. And to everybody who is catching this on replay, sorry you missed me live, but I hope to catch you live soon and in the chat. In the meantime, everybody, have a good night and God bless.